Elliot Van Dusen, the Corporate Director of Paranormal Phenomena Research and Investigation, PPRI, is proud to announce that our inaugural Halifax Paranormal Symposium was a spectacular success. Thank you to all of our sponsors, vendors, and attendees. As a result of your support, we are pleased to announce the second annual Halifax Paranormal Symposium. Join us in October 2024 for an all-day event. Enjoy amazing presentations about parapsychology and the paranormal, browse our wonderful vendor tables, and enjoy the company of the spooky community. The Halifax Paranormal Symposium will be held on Saturday, October 12, 2024 at the Halifax Tower Hotel and Conference Centre from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. For information on speakers, vendors, purchasing tickets online, hotel accommodation reservations and more, visit www.ppri.net.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Doing that thing you do, breaking my heart into a million pieces, like you always do. And you don't mean to be cruel, you never even knew about the heartache I've been going through. Well, I try to forget you, girl, but it's just so hard to do. Every time you do that thing you do.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 2 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we will cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here from the studios of the X Zone Broadcast Network in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, and heard around the world not only on the XZBN but also on Talkstar Radio Network and the Mutual Broadcast Network. And if you're driving in your car, or if you're working or you're at one of the beaches here in Niagara and you're listening to us on your AM radio station, that means that you're listening to us on Classic 1220 CFAJ AM right here in St. Catharines, Ontario, actually just down the street from our broadcast center. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone at Xzone Radio TV, and on all social media sites, Xzone Radio. My guest this hour is Gail Rubin, and we're going to be talking about death and funeral planning this hour. And Gail is a pioneering in death and educator who uses humor from film clips and outside of the box activities to teach about the end-of-life topics and planning ahead. Joining me now from Albuquerque, New Mexico is Gail Rubin. And Gail, welcome to the X Zone.
Rob, great to be with you.
Gail, how did you get into the profession of death and funeral planning?
Kind of in a roundabout way. I actually got married in the year 2000 and had a very creative Jewish Western wedding. And everybody had such a good time. I wanted to write a book about creative life cycle events and call it Matchings, Hatchings, and Dispatchings. And I got to write a monthly feature in a local newspaper by that title. And it was the stories about death and funerals that got the most reader response. So, you know, there was already plenty about creative wedding planning books out there, but 15 years ago, there was not much about creative funeral planning. So I focused on funerals, and that changed the course of my career.
It's funny because people really do not take the funeral and death planning very seriously, and yet it's one of the two things in life we have to take care of. You know, you've got to pay your taxes, and of course you're going to die. But
Yes.
the ironic part is, Gail, that the moment we are conceived is the moment we start to die. And yet people do not take death seriously. It's like they say, I know, I'll worry about it tomorrow. I'll worry about it tomorrow. I'll worry about it tomorrow. Oh, hell, Dad was in a car accident. He's killed. And what do we do now?
Yeah. Well, and it's like it always happens to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
But if you haven't done any kind of planning and informing your loved ones, they are going to be stuck with making a lot of expensive decisions while they're grieving, which is not a good time to be being good about making informed decisions.
Right.
That's why I like to encourage people to shop before you drop and go to funeral homes and find out, you know, what your options are and what they cost. And it varies widely from funeral home to funeral home.
Are more people being cremated these days compared to, let's say, 15, 20 years ago?
Absolutely, yes. And it's actually a higher rate in Canada than it is in the United States. I believe in the United States we're up above 68% nationwide. There are, you know, states where burial is still the preferred option.
Right.
But and in Canada, I think it's over 85%.
That's an interesting statistic. And I would imagine that the choice between traditional burial and cremation also depends on the religious and philosophical views of the person and family that is now faced with this dilemma.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people are choosing cremation because generally a direct cremation costs less than a full freight funeral and burial.
What is the average cost of a, let's say, middle of the road funeral?
Well, I will tell you, my husband died in April of last year.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. It's given me real life material to talk about in terms of that. And we had planned ahead and we had prepaid, which involves buying an insurance policy that pays the funeral home. But his funeral, with the funeral, the burial plot, opening and closing the grave, the obituary, and the marker, you were looking at $15,000 US.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is.
And I got money back because I did pre-plan, and for some reason, you know, various expenses did not materialize. So that's one of the benefits of pre-planning. You can get money back.
Let us say that somebody is on vacation, on a cruise, and unfortunately their partner dies. What happens? What is the procedure about getting the person back to the funeral home, back home, in order to, you know, have his last wishes or her last wishes followed?
Well, if you're on a cruise, chances are they'll put them in a refrigerator on the ship, a morgue, because that happens more often than you might think.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Most cruise ships have at least a one-person morgue on board. And then once you get back to the port, you need to arrange for body transportation. And usually if it would originate with the funeral home that's in your home market. So if you haven't pre-planned, your partner, your spouse is going to be on the phone trying to connect with funeral homes to figure out which one they want to use to get the body back. And if you had pre-planned, it makes it a lot easier to know, oh, okay, I'm calling XYZ funeral home. And in fact, one of the offerings that when you pre-plan, you can buy an insurance policy for about $500 that will cover this cost, no matter where in the world you are, as long as you're more than 75 miles away from your home market. Right. And you're saving thousands and thousands of dollars. It costs a lot to ship a body back.
If a person dies at sea and they're in international waters, where does the legality of the death certificate come in?
Ooh. I think it eventually winds up with your physician in your home market to write off on the death certificate, but it might say the place of death,
Right.
international waters. Yeah.
Interesting. I've got about 2.5 minutes before I go to my first break. Are a lot of people now considering careers in the funeral business?
It's interesting. More women are getting involved in the funeral business. In mortuary schools, it's greater than 50% of the students are women. But there's also a new trend in something called death doulas. You might have heard of a birth doula.
Yes, yeah.
Women who help women give birth. But a death doula is someone who helps people who are nearing the end of their life take care of the practical matters, but also is there to help the family when the dying process is taking place. And I also got to witness that with my in-laws earlier this year, back in July. And I can tell you more about it. But I don't know how I would have gotten through it without their help.
Well, let's talk about that on the other side of the break. That's coming up very shortly. And Exo Nation, our guest this hour is Gail Rubin. And we're talking about death and funerals because they are a fact of life. And like Gail was telling us, it pays off to be prepared. And if you'd like more information about Gail, you can visit her website at, do you have your pencils and paper ready? BeforeDieFestivals.com and
Before I Die Festivals.
BeforeIDieFestivals.com and agoodgoodbye.com. Gail Rubin is my guest, and we'll have Gail back on the other side of this very short break that's coming up in about a minute and a half from now. I'd like to tell everyone that the X-Chronicles newspaper for October is going to be released worldwide next Wednesday. Why the little bit of a holdback? Well, because we decided that for our 36th year in broadcasting, we were going to let people have a half-page ad in the X-Chronicles newspaper for $36. And man, it's going crazy. So we've even had to add more pages onto the X-Chronicles than we had before, now putting the newspaper up at over 100 pages for the first time in the publication's history. I'll be back on the other side of this break, and if you'd like to, I should tell you that if you'd like to take part in the advertising of the X-Chronicles newspaper, just send an email to publisher@xchronicles.net. That's publisher@xchronicles.net. The X on a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and of course, your hometown radio, Classic 1220, CFAJ AM. Wow, FM, I just upped the rates. CFAJ AM in St. Catharines, Ontario, streaming at classic1220.ca.
Said I was in my early 40s with a lot of life before me when a moment came that stopped me on a dime. I spent most of the next days looking at the x-rays, talking about the options and talking about the sweet time. I asked him when it sank in that this might really be the real end. How's it hit you? when you get that kind of news. Man, what you do? And he said, I went skydiving, I went Rocky Mountain climbing, I went 2.7 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu. And I loved deeper, and I spoke sweeter, and I gave forgiveness I've been denying. And he said, someday I hope you get the chance to live like you were dying.
Welcome back, everyone. Gail Rubin is our special guest of this hour. Her two websites are beforeidiefestivals.com and agoodgoodbye.com. I have to ask you, what is a Before I Die festival? I've never heard of that before.
Oh, they are these incredible multi-day events where the general public can come and be entertained as well as educated about planning ahead for end-of-life issues. I'm holding my 7th annual one in New Mexico coming up November 1st through the 4th. And people can join in on Zoom and hear. We've got 4 different themes each day. The first day is about eco-friendly funerals, because there is a growing interest in green burial.
Yeah, I've heard about those, yes.
Hospice 101 and medical aid in dying, which is legal here in New Mexico, and I believe it is all across Canada.
That's right.
And third day, preparing for the inevitable. And the 4th day, unexpected deaths. Yeah. And I love that song you picked for the lead-in, that we really do need to live like we're dying.
Exactly.
Fully and deeply and consciously.
I have to ask you this. How do funeral directors keep their sanity? And I don't mean that in a sarcastic way, because they see so much grief. And how do they cope with it?
It is a big issue. I go to the funeral director conventions, and in fact, I'll be going to the National Funeral Directors Association convention in New Orleans, woohoo, in a couple of weeks. And funeral directors are wonderful, funny people when there's no death around.
Right.
So going and meeting them at conventions is great. But in fact, I've noticed in the programming that they have sessions about self-care and how to, bring space between the tragedies you may deal with on a daily basis and your own sanity. So it can be a challenge, but some seek it in less healthy ways than others. But meditation, exercise, taking time with your family. Yeah.
It's the same thing when I was in the police force. You had ways to deal with the trauma of being a police officer at times. And there were those who took the alternative ways, just like you were describing. And, I fully understand and appreciate the hard work that funeral directors do. And the ones that I've had the pleasure of meeting, both on the job and off, are very compassionate, very kind, very understanding, and very, very original. Like, you can tell that they really care.
Most funeral directors are in it because they care about people, not for the money. And so many people, are appalled because they don't shop around ahead of time, and they get sticker shock under bad circumstances when somebody has died, and now they're shopping around, and it doesn't have to be that way. I tell people it's a fascinating shopping trip, and shop before you drop.
Exactly. Before we went to break, we were talking about death doulas.
Yes.
Now, I've heard of the doulas that come in and help with the birth, and I would imagine that a death doula comes in very handy if the person is going to be passing at a home where they are, and so on. Tell me more about it and the experiences that you've had dealing with death doulas.
So I have 2 women here in Albuquerque, one of which she used to be a a nurse in a hospital, especially in the intensive care unit and the emergency room. And she found herself drawn to helping those people who were at death's door and helping them cross through. And she, in fact, had her own near-death experience from some kind of sepsis and issues. But she did not cross over. She came back. But she got a glimpse of the other side. And she brings that insight to the work that she does with dying people. So my in-laws, I told you my husband died.
Yes.
My mother-in-law, his mother, married 12 years ago. Her first husband died, and within 6 months, her second husband, a guy named Al, Myra and Al, his wife died. And within a couple of months, these two couples had been friends for decades, literally. So suddenly it's like, oh, we know each other so well. So they started a late in life romance and got married.
I love it.
It's wonderful. Yes, you can be 83 and find love again. Well, so now here we are years later, and they were both 95. And Al had actually wanted to consider medical aid in dying for the two of them together, which is very rare. But it turned out at the time Myra qualified, but Al was too healthy. And then 6 months later, he was actively dying. I was called to their apartment. He's sitting there in his easy chair. He's he's drinking water, sitting in his bathrobe, but he does not interact with me. He doesn't recognize that I'm there. And so Myra and their friend Bob said, what should we do? Should we call an ambulance? And I said, no, I think it's time to call the hospice back. And I confirmed with their physician, and she said yes. And within 2 hours, a hospice nurse was there, and she said, yes, this man is actively dying, which, for me, I was like, okay, this means I am their hospice contact, and I would be the person in the home giving him morphine and other medications that the hospice gives you. Now, the death doulas, they can't do that for you. But what happened was I was advised by hospice nurses and the death doulas on things to do. But Al went first. He had this very long period of a terminal agitation where he's thrashing around on the bed.
Oh.
And so these death doulas were hands-on helping with that, changing the sheets, getting him, trying to keep him calm. And I just kept, providing the liquid morphine in his mouth and anti-nausea meds. But it was a long process of, I want to say, at least 6 to 8 hours.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah. And so having those two women there helping to manage this very large man who was thrashing around on a king-size bed, it was so helpful. And then Myra did qualify for medical aid in dying, and that's another story, but the death doulas were there as well, and that was a totally different kind of death, very peaceful. We had music, we told stories, we shared last thoughts with her, and she drank this 2 ounces of this medication, which put her asleep within 2-3 minutes, and within an hour she had passed.
Why did it take 6 to 8 hours for Al to go to the other side?
Well, he did not qualify for medical aid in dying.
Oh, I see.
And so he was dying naturally, but
boy.
natural death, it can be messy. And extended.
In a case like that, would it not be advantageous to call 911? And,
No.
no, eh?
No, well, he was already on hospice. And
Oh, I
when
see.
somebody is on hospice, you call the hospice, not 911.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Why do you think that death has such a negative connotation in some cultures? My culture is Irish, and the difference between a wedding and a wake in Ireland is one less drunk. So yes, you can use that. Go right ahead.
Okay.
We celebrate the life of the one that has passed. Mm-hmm. And it's a reality of life. You never know when you're going to get that phone call that somebody that you love has passed.
Yeah.
And
people don't.
Yeah.
They're afraid of the unknown, and I personally
Yeah.
believe there is something on the other side of this physical lifetime.
So do I. Yeah.
And but there are a lot of people who don't, and it's actually funny. One of the speakers that I have at my Before I Die festival
Mm-hmm.
is a noted psychic, Tammy Holmes, and she gave me a reading after last year's festival, after both my husband and my father had died.
Right.
And so I got to talk through her with them, and that was very a wonderful thing. But I also had a friend of mine who did not believe in life after death.
All right, we're going to have a bit of a cliffhanger here, my friend, because I've got to take the break at the bottom of our hour here. Gail Rubin is my very special guest, and Gail's websites are beforeidifestivals.com and agoodgoodbye.com. And my sense of humor, Exo Nation, I've got to say this: people are just dying to get to that Before I Die festival.
They're dying to get in.
Yeah. Gail and I will be back on the other side of the short break as we continue from our broadcast center here in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and of course, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM right here down the street from us in St. Catharines, where they stream us right around the world on classic1220.ca. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
You said I was in my early 40s with a lot of life before me, when a moment came that stopped me on a dime. I spent most of the next days looking at the x-rays, talking about the options and talking about the sweet time. I asked him when it sank in that this might really be the real end.
When you were young and your heart was an open book, you used to say, live and let live. But if this ever-changing world in which we live in makes you give in and cry, say live and let die. Live and let die.
Welcome back, everyone. Gail Rubin is our special guest this hour. www.beforeidifestivals.com and agoodgoodbye.com. Once again, thanks very much for joining us, Gail.
Great to be with you.
I understand that it's one thing for everyone to lose an adult in their family. You kind of expect it, and unless it's a sudden tragic death, and then it just sends you around the world, and you're in a world of your own, because who do you talk to?
Yes.
And what happens.
Yeah.
But when it's a younger child,
Oh, that's so hard.
we lost our granddaughter 2 years ago.
Oh,
And, the day before she was going to be born was the day they found out that there was an issue, and little one didn't make it. And I'll tell you, it ripped us apart. It just ripped us apart. And the hardest part for me was seeing my daughter go through so much pain and so much agony. How does a funeral director help in those kind of situations?
One of the important functions that a funeral or a memorial service serves is to allow your community to support the mourners, to come together, to tell stories, to expand the understanding of this person who is no longer physically present with us, and to celebrate what they brought to this lifetime. And if you don't have a funeral, it's like you haven't closed the circuit.
That's right. Yeah.
And you will never resolve your grief. You will always be carrying grief, and sometimes unexpectedly something will trigger a grief reaction. And it's unless you're a thanatologist, which is what I am, you may not understand that there are different kinds of grief, different grief reactions, different ways we process that grief to at least grow around what can be a big black ball in your heart, or a hole in your heart. It will never go away, but we learn to grow around grief. And it helps to have that kind of event. When my husband died, I was not expecting him to die. He went in for prostate surgery, and it led to a heart attack and sepsis and coding in the hospital.
Wow.
And within 3 weeks, he had died. And we had the funeral. Oh my God, there were like 130 people at this funeral. And they were there to help support me. Some of them, were really just from other areas of my life, but people knew this death had occurred and they wanted to come and show their support, and I so appreciated it. So the funeral director, if he or she is a very sensitive person who can craft a creative event. This is the thing about funerals. It's like people want to spend all this time planning all the details for a wedding or a birthday party or a graduation. But when it comes to that grief associated with a funeral, it stops people's creativity from flowing to extend that love that you feel for that person into this event that can start a healing process for those who love that person.
What I can't understand is that you go to a funeral and you hear all the eulogies and, John was such a wonderful person. And then there's stories that this person tells about John, and then somebody else gets up and, you get a number of these happening. And I often wonder, when John was alive, did anybody tell him that? Like, why wait until the person is gone before you say what you really feel about him or her?
And in fact, there is a trend that is coming along called living funerals, where usually if the person is on hospice and they're recognizing that the end is coming into sight,
right,
they would have that kind of gathering where people tell that person how much they mean to them and what they've accomplished. And I would love to do something like that if I find myself in that situation.
That's a wonderful idea. And whoever came up with that idea should, God, good for you. And I'm sure this also prepares the family for the ultimate end to this person's life. And instead of going into it as a complete
surprise.
Exactly, everybody kind of knows, and this person who may not have known how this lady or this man felt about him realizes that, hey, he touched or she touched somebody's life in a positive way in such a manner that they want that person to know what they feel.
In fact, I did write about an early living funeral because I knew the son of this man who had the living funeral. He was on oxygen. He had, I think, COPD, and he was on hospice. But they planned this huge gathering of people from. He was a teacher, so
wow.
Everybody who was in that community. He was in Alcoholics Anonymous, so the recovery community was there. They had a brass band. They had a potluck lunch. They had all these people getting up and saying what this man had done for them. And he loved every minute of it. And he got up at the end and he said, you live a long time, a short time. This has been one of the highlights of my life. And he died like within a day.
Oh, God bless him. A friend of mine in Montreal, Gus Ackerman, had this saying that I apply to everything that I can think of. You're here for a good time, not for a long time.
I love that.
Yeah. Mind you, I would imagine within the funeral business, there are times when something hilarious happens, even though it's a somber moment. Do you have any of those examples that you can share with us?
Yeah, laughter and tears at a funeral are very closely related. And what? Oh, I'm also a certified funeral celebrant, so I've actually run non-religious, non-traditional funerals, and I just like some stories that might get told, none of which are coming to mind at the moment. I'm sorry, but
I threw that curveball at you. I'm sorry.
I would like to recommend a reading.
Okay.
Especially for people who are not religious. Aaron Freeman had written something called "You Want a Physicist to Speak at Your Funeral." Because it talks about the conservation of energy and how no matter is created or destroyed, and tying that into the people who are mourning that person's passing. Because according to the first law of energy, none of you is gone, you're just less organized. And that's the last line.
But that is so true.
Yeah.
I would imagine that at a Christmas party for funeral directors, there has to be a lot of stories that go around.
Oh my God. I was at a funeral director convention.
Right.
And I was on a bus going to some event with these couple of older funeral directors. And one of them said, "Hey, it's good to see you." The other one said, "It's good to be seen, better than being viewed." I was like, I'm going to remember that one.
Yeah. Two guys going to a bar. One guy says to the other guy, he says, "You know what? My mother-in-law is a real angel." The other guy looks at him and says, "Oh, you're lucky. Mine's still alive." I would imagine during the time of COVID, it was havoc for the funeral directors and
oh my gosh,
those who
yes.
had members of their family pass.
And, so many people were dying, and you couldn't have more than like 5 people gathered together, and they had to stay 6 feet apart.
Oh, gosh.
And masking. And this is actually where the funeral business took a big step forward in terms of utilizing virtual funerals, yeah, to Zoom or put them on Facebook or whatever. But and actual companies like a company called Keeper, which is actually based there in Quebec, they provide streaming services for funeral homes and families that want to have their own memorial services, because a lot of families just want to do it themselves. But it's good to have a professional like Keeper to help set things up, make sure the technology works, and to run it smoothly so that people who are all across the country, even around the world, can participate.
How did the funeral industry deal with logistics during COVID? If you had to get somebody from point A to point B, and dealing with the increased number of cadavers that they had to deal with?
Yeah, there were a lot of morgues that were filled to overflowing and refrigerated trucks that had to be brought in to manage the numbers. And really, once dealing with the body itself wasn't the issue. It was the living, breathing people who might have COVID that was the issue. But so limiting the number of family members that could participate in an in-person setting. And that went on for months,
That's
years.
Right.
And but yeah.
Gail, we've got to take our final break. Please stand by. And Exonation, Gail Rubin is our special guest. And her website is www.beforeidiefestivals.com and agoodgoodbye.com. And Gail and I will be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour of the X Zone. And starting when we say goodbye to Gail, in the nice way, not the funeral way, that's when we're going to be starting hour number 2. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Whatever you do, don't go away because we'll be back very shortly.
And your heart was an open book. You used to say, live and let live. But if this ever-changing world in which we live in makes you give in and cry. Another day's at end. Mama says she's tired again. No one can even begin to tell her. I hardly know what to say, but maybe it's better that way. If Papa were here, I'm sure he'd tell her. Shannon is gone, I hope she's drifting out to sea. She always loved to swim away. Maybe she'll find an island where there's shade and trees, just like the one in our backyard.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. Gail Rubin is our special guest this hour. And her websites are www.beforeidiefestivals.com and www.agoodgoodbye.com. First of all, Gail, thanks very much for joining us tonight. It's a great pleasure talking to you, and I hope that we've opened up a few eyes to the fact that it's better to be prepared. And like the Boy Scouts, always used to say, be prepared. Now we know why. Yeah.
Yes.
I heard, and I don't know if this is still a practice, where there are communities or countries that actually allow the deceased to be put in a bag, a burlap bag or some other kind of bag, and they are planted. Have you heard
Green
of this?
burial.
Right. Is that what it's called? Okay.
Yes, yes. In fact, that is a growing phenomenon. We'll be talking about eco-friendly funerals as part of our Before I Die festival. And not only do you have green burial, where you're put basically in the ground, wrapped in a shroud or in a biodegradable casket.
Okay.
Without a liner. You could also be composted. There's natural organic reduction is what they call it, but it's basically putting the body into a tank with biomaterial like straw and wood chips and whatnot, and through the natural process of composting, within 6 to 8 weeks, that body becomes all natural compost material. And the family can take it and put it in their garden or donate it to improve a parkland, things like that.
Holy cow.
Or there is a company called Better Place Forests, which has a number of forests across North America where if you choose cremation, you could have those cremated remains interred under a specific tree, and you could even put a marker there. But basically, all of these forests become conservation land. You just happen to have cremated remains buried under the trees. So there are a number of things, people might still choose cremation for the convenience.
Right.
And that cost, but then choose to do different things with the cremated remains after that. And boy, there are a lot of things you can do, and a lot of people will just scatter them.
Yes.
But
it's I could just imagine it. The people have their loved one put into the compost, right? And after 6 to 8 weeks, they come back with this, with this package of whoever this loved member of their family is, and somebody comes over and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about the loss of your mama. Where did she spend her last vacation?" "Well, she's over there. She's over there. She's over there. She's over there."
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to make light of a very serious subject, and
well, and I've been to memorial services where the person has been cremated, and part of it is you take a little container of their cremated remains and take them on your travels.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Spread them around. I actually did drop the remains of a gentleman at the Alamo in San Antonio.
Wow. We were talking about COVID before, and during COVID, my mom passed away. She's in Montreal. I'm in Ontario. We couldn't even go past the border, and that was hard. That was hard. And then what happened was, my brother and my dad, my mom was cremated, and then came the problem of, well, where are they going to intern my mother's remains because of COVID? So I can just imagine the disastrous outcome for a lot of people who lost a lot of loved ones in COVID. And I just hope and pray to God that we don't see another disease like that again.
In our lifetimes.
In anybody's lifetime, because it was really hard on a lot of people.
Yes.
I understand that you're the host of a TV show.
Yes, the Mortality Movies TV series. You can see them on YouTube. My YouTube channel is at Gail Rubin.
Right.
And what we do is I have a license to use films in my talks, and people will remember a TV show scene or a film scene a lot longer than they'll remember what anybody tells them just straight out. So what I did with Mortality Movies is myself and two other death educators are on a panel, and I introduce a film clip, we watch it, and then we talk about it and the lessons that we learn. And I've done 14 episodes so far.
Holy
with
cow.
Everything from landmark death films, the films of Woody Allen, talking about cremation, what funeral directors do, grief. We did 3 different episodes on grief and helping to process grief and how grief shows up. So It's a wonderful series. I'm very proud of it, and I'm hoping to educate a lot of people this way by watching mortality movies.
You are one fascinating lady.
Very creative when it comes to educating people. In fact, the Association for Death Education and Counseling gave me their 2024 Community Educator Award this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
When you were a little girl, did you have any idea that you'd end up doing what you're doing and how many hearts that you touch on a daily basis?
Not well. Halloween is my favorite.
Now, why
holiday.
doesn't that surprise me, right?
I was putting up fake tombstones in our front yard for trick or treating before anybody else did that. But I didn't know, I think, until I was in college, and I majored in TV and film, and one of my film projects was a satire of the opening scene in Ingmar Bergman's classic film, The Seventh Seal.
Yeah.
And when I look back at that project, I realize, okay, I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing, which is making fun of death with films and helping get people to plan ahead.
Do you think that we'll ever get over the stigma of death as a society?
You know, it takes good self-esteem to consider your own mortality. And there are studies that indicate that like 2/3 of the population has low self-esteem. And that kind of translates to the 30% or so of people who do plan ahead. So I'm not sure if we'll ever get there, but I'm hoping to make a dent in those percentages with Before I Die festivals and mortality movies.
Gail, I want to thank you ever so much for joining us. And what we're going to do is we're going to say so long to all of the people who have passed that we all carry in our heart and have fond memories of as we go out of this segment playing I Will Remember You by a good Canadian, Sarah McLachlan. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away. We'll be back after the top of the hour with hour number 2 of the X Zone.